All right, on 4.2, we're doing a little more reflecting. We're reflecting of absolute value. So again, let's write some points from our original function, which is f of x. That's our original function. And so let's go write these points, just are listed on this graph. They are -6, 6, and then we have -4, 0, and -1, 3, 0, 1.5. We're going to get one right off the axis, and then 1, 0, and then 4, -4, and then 8, -4. Okay, so we've got all the points listed for our original function. Now we're going to do an absolute value, and these are very different, and you have to be very careful. They're not as straightforward as the ones from the other chart. So what I want to do is I want to make some notes over here on the right and talk about absolute value. So when we have the absolute value, okay, of y, okay, there are no negative y values. Okay. Now, what that means as far as graphing, and this is going to be kind of hard, but I want you to take these notes. You're going to anchor, step 1, I want you to anchor the roots, which are the zeros where it crosses the x-axis. Remember, that's a root. And then step 2, or then you're going to reflect any points that are below the x-axis I'm going to just write on out into the gray here, below the x-axis, okay, to above the x-axis. Okay. Then you're going to keep, so that's step 2 and 3, you keep all of the original that is above the x-axis. Okay, so that's the process. So let's look what that means. We're going to graph it first. We're going to graph it first, and then we're going to list some points. So it's kind of opposite of what we did before. Looking at your original function, where are the roots? The roots are on the x-axis, so one of them is at -4, 0, right there. And one of them is at 1, 0. Those are your roots. So you put those and you anchor those there. Then anything that is below the x-axis needs to be reflected above it. So we only have 2 points on the right that are below the x-axis. So you're going to go down, and where you have a -6, and the y value is 6, so at -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Instead of going down, you're going to go up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and be right there. Okay? Then at the other one that's below the x-axis is at 8, you're at -4. So now we're going to go I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Let me back up. I was at 4, negative 4. So at 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. If you look up here, these are the 2 points that are below the x-axis. And so what I want to do then is make those positive 4 so they're above the x-axis. So then I go to 8, positive 4. Everything else is going to stay the same because it's already above the x-axis. So I'm going to go at 0, 1.5, I have a point, and at negative 6, we're going to go up 6, put a point there, and then we have our anchor point. We go down to that. Then we go to negative 1, we're up 3. Okay, there, here, and then instead of below the x-axis, that part is the only part that's actually changed, and it's reflected above the x-axis. So that one is not too bad. And you see, if you notice on here, and I don't know why this came out the way it did, but your absolute value marks are around the whole function. If I was to write this, and like I said, I don't know why that has that kind of globby parentheses, but it's the absolute value of the whole function f of x. That's what that's saying. I want the absolute value of the whole function. When we go down to example 2, though, what you've got there, and again that's not clear, so I'm going to write it, we have f of the absolute value of x. So the only thing we're taking the absolute value of is just the x part. And this is much harder to graph and makes a whole lot less sense. But let me see if I can at least give you the process. So what you want here, we want to take the absolute value of x. Okay, of x. I guess I should say of x. So let me do that, of x. Okay, absolute value of x. So that means, what that means is that x and negative x must yield the same y value. So x and negative x have to give us the same y value. Now that's kind of sounds reasonable, but it's difficult in a way to graph. All right, so we want to reflect. What that means is the right side of the graph okay, across the y-axis. All right. So, since we want to we're going to reflect the right side of the graph across the y-axis. But first, we really this should have been, let's skip a step here. So, we're going to erase the left side, okay? left side of the graph. So we're going to erase the left side. So that's really your second step. So I kind of messed you up a little bit. I'm sorry. Your steps should be, this should be step 1 where you erase the left side, and step 2 then we're going to reflect it. So let's look at the graph and see what that means. So pretend in your mind you've erased the left side of that graph. Everything on the x-axis you erase. Left of the x-axis you erase. So let's draw in everything that we've got on the right axis just as it is. So we've got 0, 1.5, and then you go down and you've got 1, 0, and you've got 4, -4, and you've got 8, -4. Okay? And then so that part looks like this. Okay, that's the right side of the graph as it exists. So those points are in this absolute value function. So we've got 0, 1.5, you've got 1, 0, you've got 4, -4, and you've got 8, -4. Now, we've got to reflect the right side, reflect this graph, so it has to have a mirror image now. So, I'm going to have a point here. I want to reflect it. I've got a mirror image, so I've got a point there at 0, 1, and then I've got points down here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and at 8, -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I want too many spaces over here, so I've got to erase this one. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So there's my mirror image points that I have to put on the graph. So step 1, erase everything to the left of the x-axis. Step 2, reflect what you've got left over the y-axis. So now the points that I have on the graph that I've added just now are -1, 0, -4, 4, and -8, 4. Okay? So, that's how you graph an absolute value function. So, for this next piece, let's just write in what we've learned as we've done these. When we reflect across the x, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to change the sign of y. This is just a summary. Okay? When you reflect across the y-axis, you change the sign of x. Okay? Reflect across the origin, change the sign of both. Okay? Now, when it's reflected across at y equals x, you swap the x's and y's. Okay? Now, when it's a absolute value of the whole function, there are no negative y values. Sorry about the phone. Just ignore it. No negative y values. And you reflect the negative values across the x-axis. Okay? Now, for the absolute value of just the x, you only keep the right side of the graph. That includes the y-axis, so keep the right side of the graph. Okay? And then you reflect it, what's left, you reflect that right side across the y-axis. Okay? Now, on these grids below,